In the Bible story, after decades in the desert, Moses obeyed God's order to go back to Egypt.
And so Moses goes back to the Egypt in which he grew up, to the court where he learned and became a young man, and confronts Pharaoh, surely someone he knew as a young man, to say, here I am, I'm not the Egyptian you thought I am, I too am an Israelite, and I'm asking for my people to be released.
To convince the Pharaoh, God gave Moses the power to perform what the Bible refers to as signs and wonder.
It's not the case that he goes to Pharaoh and says, let my people go, and Pharaoh says, okay.
The most famous of these powers was the ability to turn his staff into a snake. In the ancient world, stories of snakes and magic were common.
A magician takes a little image of wax, which can be held in the hand of a crocodile, and as soon as he throws it on the ground, it becomes a real crocodile until the magician grabs the crocodile by the tail, and once again it reverts to its small size in his palm.
These magicians were men of high status back in ancient Egypt. It's a tradition that continues to this day. Yikes! Back in Luxor, we met Muhammad. He comes from a long line of snake charmers. His snakes, on the other hand, not so charming.
Oh my goodness, there's something. Oh, it's pooped. Gross snake. Do you know the story of Moses, Muhammad?
When the stick turned into a snake, this was from God. God made that happen.
Right. So can you turn the snake into a stick?
He doesn't have special powers.
You don't have special powers? You can't do it. It only comes from God?
He was a prophet.
Oh, Moses was a prophet.
Moses gave his brother Aaron the job of impressing the Pharaoh.
He throws down his staff and it becomes a serpent.
And when the magicians of Egypt attempted to do the same thing, they succeeded. But Moses' rod had the advantage. He swallowed them all up.
The Egyptians effectively laugh at him, and the magicians say, oh, this is a little piece of trickery, forget about it.
Unimpressed, Pharaoh still refused to let the Israelites go. It was at this point that God unleashed a series of disasters known as the 10 plagues.
These are absolutely horrible. As horrible as anything you can imagine.
And every spring, Jews commemorate the Exodus story in the Passover Seder. They remember the 10 plagues by placing on each plate a drop of wine for every plague.
Hail, gnats and flies and things of that sort.
Wild beasts, plague, boils.
Darkness, which was supposedly not only a darkness that was the absence of light, but a darkness that was too thick to pass. It was so dark that you literally couldn't even walk through it.
It would look like a short series of natural disasters that most of the people sort of understood in terms of their gods and their religion.
Can we account for the plagues naturally? Probably. Is that the point of the story? Certainly not. In the space of a year, these 10 disasters destroyed Egypt. And that's the point. It's a miracle. Miracles don't beg natural descriptions. Miracles are miracles. They are when God intervenes in the order of nature.
Then God told Moses to prepare the people for the coming of the 10th and worst plague, the killing of all the firstborn.
Moses instructed the Jews to sacrifice a lamb and to paint its blood on their doors so that the angel of death would know who was Jewish and who wasn't. This is where the term Passover comes from.
And pass over that house.
Right.
The Seder is a time where Jews are encouraged to ask questions, especially the children.
How do you wrestle with that? What does it mean?
Well, I think there are a lot of ways to wrestle with it. You can wrestle with the political ramifications. Freedom never comes easy. It has never historically come easy. Wars never end easily. People do not obtain rights easily. But it says in the Talmud that when we divorce justice from mercy, that is pure evil. So it was unquestionably just to free slaves. And it's unquestionably right to be merciful. But it certainly seems in the 10th plague like mercy has been divorced from justice. Whatever we think about the Egyptian enslavers, we must believe that some of them were good people, or some of them were at least indifferent. And we know that the infants were innocent.
The Bible says that on that night, the angel of death swept through Egypt. Even the pharaoh lost his own son, and he quickly sent for Moses.
For all of the first 9, it was possible for the pharaoh to say this was not enough. Say, I'm not ready to free the Jews yet. It's hard to imagine that the Egyptians themselves weren't saying, enough already, especially because these palaces weren't being built for them, but for the pharaoh. But at the killing of the firstborn, which included the pharaoh's son, the pharaoh finally said, enough.
And the Bible says the pharaoh told Moses, "Take your people and go."